The F-4S is the newest premium added to the American tech tree. I guess the A6E wasn't selling enough and the Guardian wanted some more money. Anyway, the F-4S is a modernization of the F-4GA. It was basically made to extend the service life of the Phantom with the US Navy. They couldn't really do too much to the plane, and especially because the F-14 was in development at the time, I imagine, they really weren't looking to spend too much money. The plane has enhanced mobility, as well as a slightly better radar. The plane currently sits in the 7th rank of the American tech tree, sits at battle rating 11.0 in arcade and simulator, and 11.3 in realistic. Because of this, the plane will see up tiers to battle rating 12.0, it does not sit in that 10.7 sweet spot. The plane has powerful engines, but is limited to around Mach 1.1 on the deck, so it is quite slow. On the other hand though, the plane is basically a miniature F-14, as it is armed with 4 AIM-9H infrared guided missiles, as well as 4 AIM-7F semi-active radar homing missiles. All of these factors combined make the F-4S one of the most potent premium jets currently in War Thunder. It is a very good grinder and quite fun to play. However, I don't really think it justifies the $70 price tag. That's just my quick rundown of this vehicle. If you'd like to see more lads, then as always, stick around for the rest of the video. Alright lads, welcome back. To kick things off, the F-4S is powered by 2 General Electric GA79s, producing 8,160 kilograms of thrust when afterburning. I'm not really going to all the statistics because at top tier it doesn't really matter, it's more focused on your missile performance rather than the kinematic performance of your jet. But the most important thing to know at top tier is that the faster you go, the longer range that your missiles will have, as the launch and sustainer motor have less work to do getting the missile up to speed. This is a bit of a problem for the F-4S because, as I said, the Phantom airframe isn't really the cleanest at lower altitudes. You get up to about Mach 1.1 and then you kind of just stop accelerating, to be honest. It's a little bit different at higher altitudes, but I wouldn't really say that this plane is a high altitude jouster in my opinion. While they did upgrade the maneuverability of the chassis, the F-4S is still nowhere near maneuverable enough, especially at higher altitudes, to really compete in jousting. You just can't get a notch that fast. You're nowhere near as bad as something like the Tornado, but you're still a brick with wings basically. Because of this, I would strongly recommend not climbing at the start of a game, or at least not climbing to high altitudes. One, because you're going to start conning, which gives your position away to literally everyone on the enemy team, and because you are much better on the deck. While you are quite limited by your top speed, as I've mentioned, I think if you just stay low and kind of meander your way around the map and then come to the enemy from the side, you can put your fantastic missiles to very good effect. The most of the missile kills that I've got have been from the AIM-7Fs from head-ons or nearly head-ons, and they were almost certainly all at lower altitudes. Speaking of getting kills, let's go over some of the weapon systems, starting with the radar. And this plane comes equipped with the same AN/APG-59 radar system found on the F-4GA. This has a regular search mode, as well as a pulse Doppler head-on mode. I'd recommend switching to the PD mode as soon as you take off, as this is really the only viable radar mode for this plane, especially if you are planning on using the AIM-7s. The pulse Doppler mode basically allows you to lock onto targets both below you and coming straight at you. However, enemies that are above you, you can switch back to the normal search mode. This will prevent enemies from notching you, but it will make you very vulnerable to chaff. But for the most common tactic for missile jousting with AIM-7Fs, just keep the pulse Doppler mode activated. If we then take a look at the pilot, we can see that we have a constantly calculated release point for the bombs, as well as a CCIP, or constantly calculated impact point, for the cannons, rockets and the bombs as well. The plane also features an RWR system, which in theory does protect you from sneak attacks by enemies that come from behind you, but in reality it's probably just going to annoy you with all the spiking and nails that you get from basically just friendly players. Being a derivative of the F4J, the F-4S also has the HMD, or the helmet mounted display. This is similar to the system found on the MiG-29. It basically allows you to make very high angle off bore sight locks really. You do only have the AIM-9Hs, which we'll cover shortly though, which aren't the most maneuverable of missiles, which does limit the usefulness of this thing, but I guess it is nice to have than to not have it. We now come on to one of the downsides of this plane, and that is the fact it does not have an internally mounted gun. We can still take along the 20mm Mark 11 Mod 5 cannon. This is mounted under the belly of the aircraft and does give us a pretty decent 20mm cannon with 750 rounds of ammunition. The gun generally does hit hard, and I would recommend taking it rather than not having a gun, but it does add a little bit of drag to the plane. It's not a dramatic amount, but it does significantly reduce the rate of climb for the aircraft. Again, I would recommend taking it. It should still be your primary way of getting kills, or the primary way you plan on getting kills. Relying on missiles is stupid, and you can use it for ground pound at the end of a match or when you've got a little bit of free time. We also have a variety of dumbfire rockets. We have the Mighty Mouse as well as the Zunis. The Mighty Mouse, you can carry a lot of them, but they have rather mediocre levels of penetration and post-pen damage. Where the Zunis are the polar opposite, you can only carry a limited amount of them, but they have a large amount of penetration and post-pen damage. There's not really too much to use unguided rockets for at top tier, and if you're playing the Americans, you've probably got better cast jets if you're planning on using this in ground realistic as well, but it does give you the option at least. We then have several selections of bombs to choose from. We have 250 pounders, 500 pounders, 750 pounders, and 1000 pounders. Again, a little bit like the dumbfire rockets, the bombs are a little redundant at this high battle rating, especially if you've got some of the other rank 6, 7 and 8 aircraft in the American tech trees, as these planes in my opinion are much better for CAS. But again, it does give you a nice option. We then come on to the missiles, and arguably the worst missile that we have is the AIM-9H. This is the same IR missile that we have on the F-14, and while it is still decent, it's just not very maneuverable to be honest, and it is a little bit sluggish. It's only got 18 Gs of maximum overload, and while H does sound quite modern, it's basically just an AIM-9G with some better components inside of it. Being a naval fighter, the F-4S, it gets banged around a lot, especially on landing on carriers. So the AIM-9Hs were basically just Gs, but like strengthened to make them resist shocks better. It has pretty much no effect in game, to be honest, but they are still pretty decent. They're nowhere near as good as the AIM-9Ls, which are on a lot of the rank 8 jets at top tier now. But anyway, they are still more than usable. As I said, you do have that helmet mounted display, which does allow you to make high angle off bore sight shots. You can't really use that feature to its best ability though, because you are lacking a missile like an AIM-9L. But our last missile is the AIM-7F, arguably the missile that you're going to be getting the majority of your kills with. This is probably well known in the War Thunder community. It's probably one of the most dominant missiles at top tier now. Even though that the R27ER does pretty much outclass it, it's still the AIM-7S which is the terror of the skies at the minute. Mainly because it's found on such a magnitude of jets, but also because it has generally got good performance. It's got a long burn time, and it's quite agile with 25 Gs of maximum overload. It's quite strange that your IR missiles are actually less maneuverable than your semi-active radar homing missiles, but that indeed is the case. It is worth noting though that the only way the F-4S can engage a target head-on is using the AIM-7Fs. Because you do not have AIM-9Ls, you obviously cannot fire in an all aspect with your infrared missiles. Luckily for you though, the AIM-7Fs are fantastic, and there's not really too much to say about them. You probably already know how good they are. So to keep this review short and sweet, the plane is good fun, it's a very good grinder, it's very effective in both air realistic and ground realistic, but it's very hard for me to recommend people spending $70, but you could say that about any premium in War Thunder. But if you have $70 and you're going to buy a premium, you'd have to look pretty hard to get a plane better than the F-4S. Once again, a big thank you to all of my YouTube members for helping support the channel, and as always, thank you very much for watching.